It was supposed to be just another beautiful Friday morning. The sun had risen gently over the high desert hills of Prescott, Arizona. The sky was clean, the air crisp. Spring in the mountains always carried a peaceful charm, especially on Hayden Ridge Trail. Locals loved it for its serenity, its occasional bursts of wildflowers, and how the path twisted quietly between rock and brush. At 7:46 a.m., Amber Collins, 30 years old, sent a text to her best friend, Sierra Langley. Out early. Coffee plus the trail. Need a reset. You? Sierra, living across town, replied a few minutes later. But by then the message would remain unread. Amber wasn't someone who disappeared. She was reliable, even predictable. Worked as a skincare therapist at a local clinic. The kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who lit up rooms with corny jokes, and who, just a week earlier, had left a sticky note on Sierra's fridge. No matter how messy life gets, your face deserves better. Amber had moved to Prescott just 3 months earlier, looking for quiet. Her lease was freshly signed at a condo complex less than a mile from the Hayden Ridge Trail entrance. Every morning before work, she'd throw on leggings, a hoodie, and take her walk. It was routine. Made her feel safe. But on May 5, 2023, Amber would not return. 10:20 a.m. At Amber's clinic, a coworker named Kate noticed her absence. By 10:45, her first client had arrived and left. No call, no message. Kate texted. All good? You on your way? Nothing. Sierra texted again too, a bit puzzled now. Did you go off the grid or what? Still no read receipt. By noon, mild concern became unease. Meanwhile, a woman named Emily Rhodes, 41, had taken her Labrador, Max, for a walk along a familiar trail that edged near the old copper quarry, a part of Hayden Ridge where brush grew taller and trails got quieter. She always avoided the inner stretch past mile marker 3. It felt too cut off. But Max tugged that way that morning. What she saw would freeze her in place. Behind a weathered barbed wire fence, lying awkwardly in the sandy slope, was the body of a woman. One sneaker missing. Arms positioned unnaturally. No signs of movement. Emily stopped walking. Then she fumbled for her phone. 911, what's your emergency? I think I found someone. A woman. I was walking my dog. She's not moving. Where are you located? Near Hayden Ridge, behind mile marker 3. Near that fence. Is she breathing? I can't tell. There's blood. I don't want to get too close. Help is on the way. Stay on the line. The operator's voice remained calm. Emily's not so much. 12:34 p.m. Yavapai County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the scene. The woman had no ID on her. But the match would be made quickly. A small tattoo on her wrist, a constellation of stars, identical to the one Amber's mother described years ago. She said it was for the people she loved, all in one place. Amber Collins was officially declared deceased at 1:08 p.m. The scene wasn't just a tragic fall. Something was wrong. The scene. Amber's body was half covered in dry foliage as if someone had tried, poorly, to obscure her. Her sports bra showed a faint trail of dried blood underneath. Her hands bore small cuts, defensive maybe. Her leggings were torn at the left knee, the fabric dusty and scuffed. There were no signs of a purse, phone, or earbuds, all items she would have likely brought. One of her sneakers was found 30 feet away, near a break in the barbed wire. The other was still on her foot. Detectives from the Violent Crimes Unit were called in. The tone changed from discovery to investigation. The disconnection. By late afternoon, Sierra was at the sheriff's office, eyes red, clutching Amber's recent selfies as if they might help bring her back. She texted me this morning, Sierra whispered. She was fine. She was happy. When told about the discovery, she broke. Amber wasn't reckless. She didn't take chances with strangers. She didn't wander off paths or hike into the deep unknown. Whoever had done this had done it with purpose, or with an intent that wasn't fully thought through. Either way, someone was out there. And no one saw them coming. What came next? Detectives canvassed the area. They posted flyers, asked joggers, dog walkers, retirees who passed the trail daily. Did anyone see anything unusual? Was there someone who didn't look like they belonged? That night, local news gave the case 20 seconds of airtime. A woman found deceased near Hayden Ridge Trail today has been identified as 30-year-old Amber Collins. Police have not released details but are asking for anyone who may have seen suspicious activity to come forward. Just 20 seconds. But the clock was ticking. And by the time the sun rose again, a second person would call in, describing a man watching people hike near the ridge, alone and out of place. The investigation didn't begin with a mystery. It began with a question: how could this have happened in such an ordinary place? By noon on May 5th, the Hayden Ridge Trail, usually a backdrop for morning jogs, dog walks, and old couples holding hands, had become a controlled crime scene. Yellow tape fluttered in the desert breeze. Sheriff's deputies marked the ground with numbered placards. But nothing about this scene was cinematic. There was no loud horror, no chaos. Just the stillness of a woman no longer breathing, and a patch of dry earth stained dark beneath her ribs. The body. Amber's body was positioned strangely, not dropped, not buried, but as if it had collapsed mid-stride and never got back up. Her sports bra showed a streak of blood running diagonally from under her left breast. No gaping wound, no clear gunshot entry. Just a clean, precise mark that investigators would later describe as consistent with a sharp, controlled object. There were small abrasions on her forearms and knees, likely from falling or trying to brace herself. A dirt-covered scuff mark ran along her left thigh as if she had slid. One of her earbuds was still in place. The other was found 14 feet away, tangled in a small bush. Her phone? Gone. Her smartwatch? Also missing. There was no sign of forced sexual assault, but her clothing was torn, deliberate or incidental, they couldn't say yet. The trail's geography. Hayden Ridge Trail snakes through both open and obscured terrain, alternating between wide, sunlit tracks and narrow, brush-covered bends. The area where Amber was found sat near an old service path fenced off by rusted barbed wire, just out of view from the main trail. To the average hiker you wouldn't see her, not unless you stepped off path. Emily Rhodes, the woman who found her, did. But only because her dog pulled too hard in the wrong direction. That was luck. Or fate. Detective John Vickers, lead on the case from the Yavapai County Violent Crimes Unit, wasn't new to violence. But something about the quiet here unsettled him. It wasn't random, he told his partner. Someone brought her here or waited. The evidence bag begins to fill. By sundown, evidence technicians had collected the following. One black sneaker, left foot, found 27 feet from the body. A torn piece of hoodie fabric snagged on barbed wire. Stray blonde hair stuck to a sage bush. Multiple partial footprints around the area, including a deeper set, possibly from a heavier male. A faint smear of blood on a nearby rock. Sand samples from under her nails. But one item stood out. A footprint in dried mud with a clear tread pattern, asymmetric, unfamiliar, and not matching Amber's shoes. Sierra's statement. Sierra Langley, Amber's closest friend, was interviewed that same evening. Her voice cracked through much of it. But one thing she remembered clearly. Amber texted me that she was going for a walk and needed a reset. She said she loved how quiet that trail was, that it made her feel like no one could bother her there. The irony sank in. That same quiet was now the police's biggest obstacle. There were no cameras. No witnesses. No immediate suspects. The community reacts. By May 6th, news of Amber's death had reached local media. Small memorials, bouquets, candles, handwritten notes, began appearing near the entrance to Hayden Ridge Trail. One sign written in Sharpie simply said, "She smiled at everyone." Someone didn't smile back. The sheriff's office set up a public tip line and asked hikers who had been on the trail that morning to come forward with anything unusual. And surprisingly, someone did. The first thread. A man named Caleb Morton, 48, called in. He hiked Hayden Ridge every morning with his German Shepherd and had done so on May 5th. Didn't see anything that morning, he told the detective. But now that I think of it, yeah. Something weird happened 2 days before. May 3rd, around 9 a.m., he had seen a man, early 20s, lean build, wearing a charcoal hoodie, standing motionless behind a boulder near mile marker 3 watching the trail. Caleb didn't think much of it at the time. Figured it was a kid zoning out. But now, he looked nervous. Or high. Or just wrong. I waved. He didn't wave back. Caleb described him as having a buzz-cut, dark backpack and a strange way of standing, feet spread apart like someone trying to brace. That location? Just 60 yards from where Amber's body would be found. The pattern begins. By the end of the day, 2 more calls came in. One from a woman who jogged past a man talking to himself, near the trailhead. Another from a groundskeeper at a nearby utility station who saw a figure crouching in the brush 2 days prior. Descriptions varied slightly, but all pointed to a young man with dark clothing, alone, behaving unusually, and often spotted in early morning hours. None of them knew his name. But someone had seen his face. The trail of the hoodie. Detective Vickers requested security footage from a weather station camera mounted 600 yards away. The resolution was poor, grainy at best, but it caught motion around 9:56 a.m. on May 5th. A figure, male, sprinting through the brush, cutting across the fence line. Backpack bouncing. Hoodie flapping. Too fast for someone on a casual run. The timestamp matched perfectly with Amber's estimated time of death. That was enough to elevate the case. He wasn't just a vague presence anymore. He was a person of interest. For most of Prescott, May 7th was a Sunday like any other. Church bells rang. Coffee shops buzzed. Tourists wandered the art fair downtown, sipping cold brew and pointing at pottery. But 2 miles away, inside a windowless conference room at the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, a task force had gathered around a dry erase board covered in maps, timelines, and a blurry still frame from a weather station camera. A grainy figure mid-stride. A backpack. A hoodie. The man who ran out of nowhere and vanished into the brush. They didn't know his name. But soon his footprint would speak for him. 9:32 a.m. Evidence Lab, Flagstaff. Forensic analyst Karen Gwynn turned over a cast made from a partial shoe print found 15 feet from Amber Collins's body. The soil had been damp from recent irrigation, a rare stroke of luck in the desert. The print revealed an irregular tread pattern, worn more on the left heel, possibly from a limp or improper posture. She ran it through a footwear database. Cross-checked it with local brands sold in the region. It narrowed things down to a low-end trail shoe, common yes but not mass market, sold primarily at discount retailers in Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. Still, a dead end, until the shoe matched an older robbery file. Jerome Jared Elwood, 17 at the time. Convicted for armed robbery at a liquor store in Cottonwood. Released under supervised probation. Currently, status unknown. Kara flagged it and called the detective. A probation officer remembers. Detective John Vickers made the call that changed everything. The probation officer, Lindsay Ferris, picked up on the second ring. Jared Elwood? I haven't seen that name in months. He's supposed to check in weekly, but he hasn't since March. Was he flagged? Vickers asked. Not officially. He missed a check-in but filed a job transfer excuse. Last known address? A trailer park just west of Watson Creek. A 15-minute drive from Hayden Ridge Trail. Lindsay added one more detail. He used to show up in a hoodie. Always the same one. Gray with black drawstrings. Kind of paranoid. Told me once he slept with a knife under his pillow. Said, people watch me too close. That was enough for Vickers to quietly request a background pull. The pattern forms. While waiting on DMV data, Vickers revisited the silent witness hotline logs. He found 3 more calls from Prescott residents, all placed between May 3rd and May 6th. Each one mentioned a young white male, early 20s, average build, wearing a hoodie and backpack, loitering near the Hayden Ridge area. But it wasn't just the presence. It was the behavior. One caller said he watched women jog by but never moved. Another said he talked to himself in low whispers. The third, a mother of 2, said he followed her car with his eyes until she drove away. Each description, combined, began to build a silhouette of menace. A man who blended in just enough to be ignored, until it was too late. DMV records. Match confirmed. By 4:15 p.m., Jared Elwood's DMV photo appeared on Vickers' screen. Buzzed hair. Angular jaw. Sharp eyes under heavy lids. The detective walked the photo into the surveillance room. Pull up frame 421 from the May 5th weather cam. They enlarged the running figure. Then the DMV photo. Side by side. It wasn't conclusive, but it was close enough to ask questions. And someone somewhere had answers. The store receipt. While tracing Elwood's last known address, deputies visited a nearby discount store in Watson Creek. A cashier remembered him. That guy. Yeah, he came in May 2nd. Bought gloves, an energy drink, and a box cutter. Box cutter? The deputy asked. Yeah, one of those thin, snap blade ones. Nothing fancy. Said it was for work. Didn't say where he worked though. The transaction was caught on camera. Jared paid in cash. Wore the same hoodie seen in the trail video. Even the same backpack, black, faded, missing a zipper pull. The box cutter packaging, recovered later from a roadside dumpster, would yield a single partial fingerprint. It matched Jared Elwood. Closing in. By May 9th, Jared's name wasn't a maybe. It was the name on the board, circled in red. But Vickers didn't want to spook him. Jared had a history of flight risk, including one incident in 2021 when he tried to leave the state during an investigation into workplace harassment. So they watched. Plainclothes deputies parked near his last known trailer. Another team waited outside the gym he once listed as his employer. Then came the break. A deputy spotted Jared at a bus depot, carrying a duffel bag and a printed ticket to New Mexico. Departure time, 6:45 p.m. May 10th. They gave them 2 hours. The arrest. At 6:12 p.m., Jared Elwood exited a convenience store near the depot, sipping a Gatorade. When he turned the corner, 2 unmarked units boxed him in. He didn't resist. But when asked where he was going, he simply said, "Getting out of town." Nothing left here. Inside his bag, 1 gray hoodie, a small pocket knife with a broken clip, a prepaid phone, a burner notebook with cryptic notes about movement, safe zones, and a page titled, "Things That Can't Be Proven." The knife would be bagged and sent for testing. The hoodie compared to surveillance, and the tread of his shoes compared to the cast from the trail. They didn't have a confession, but they had enough for first-degree murder charges. They didn't expect a confession. They weren't even looking for one, not right away. They needed to understand why. When Jared Elwood was brought into the interview room at the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office on May 10th, he didn't look like a killer. He looked tired, unshaven, a small cut on his knuckle, eyes red not from crying but from not sleeping. He sat down without resistance, arms resting on the table, silent. Detective John Vickers entered calmly, slid a plastic water bottle across the table and opened a file folder. He didn't start with the trail. He started with history. A life off track. Jared Benjamin Elwood. Born, February 2000, Cottonwood, Arizona. High school dropout. No father listed. Mother, transient, later incarcerated. First arrest at 16, shoplifting. At 17, convicted for armed robbery, held a cashier at gunpoint for $120 and cigarettes. Received probation due to a plea deal and lack of prior violent record. Over the next 5 years, his record filled with red flags. Domestic disturbance calls, neighbors heard yelling. Terminated from 2 jobs for inappropriate behavior toward female coworkers. Known to carry knives, for protection, he claimed. Missed multiple probation check-ins. Diagnosed but untreated for paranoid personality traits. He never received formal psychiatric care. He also never stayed in one place long enough for anyone to notice he was unraveling. The interview begins. Vickers didn't accuse him. He asked him where he had been on the morning of May 5th. Jared, home. Vickers, we have surveillance showing someone who looks like you running near Hayden Ridge Trail around 10 a.m. Jared, shrugs, lots of people look like me. Vickers, we also found a partial print on a box cutter. Same kind sold to you 2 days earlier. Jared, I use box cutters for work. He stayed quiet, composed, but his hands trembled just slightly. Then Vickers opened a photo envelope. The cast of the shoe print from the trail. The matching sole from Jared's sneakers. A side-by-side of the hoodie from surveillance and the one found in his duffel bag. Jared looked at them. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just said, "That trail, people think it's peaceful. But it's not." The unspoken. He never admitted to following Amber. Never said he saw her. But his internet history, pulled from his prepaid phone, revealed searches like, how long does DNA stay on fabric? How far can you run before someone hears screaming? Best places to be alone in Prescott. 3 days before Amber's death, Jared had visited the Hayden Ridge Trail page on alltrails.com. He had clicked through every photo of the trail, particularly those labeled secluded or off-path. The more detectives looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. It may not have been premeditated murder, but it wasn't an accident either. Amber's last 90 seconds. According to the coroner's preliminary report, Amber likely died within a minute and a half of sustaining the wound to her chest. She had no defensive wounds on her hands, but dirt beneath her fingernails showed she had tried to crawl after falling. The barbed wire she tried to reach was just out of arm's length. Whatever happened, it was fast. And brutal. The object. The knife found in Jared's duffel bag wasn't a kitchen blade. It was a snap blade utility knife, thin and easily concealed. A forensic match wasn't definitive, but the blade length and damage pattern on Amber's sports bra suggested a tool of similar size. Press conference, May 12. Yavapai County held a public update. Lieutenant Hester stood at the podium. Behind him, Amber's parents, Daniel and Marie Collins, both pale, silent, eyes hollow. "We believe this was a crime of opportunity," Hester said. The suspect had no personal connection to the victim. He chose that place. He brought that weapon. And he made a choice that morning that cannot be undone. When asked about motive, he responded plainly. Sometimes motive doesn't come in words. It comes in silence. And patterns. Amber's father speaks. Daniel Collins stepped forward. He didn't read from notes. He didn't cry. My daughter was kind. She said good morning to strangers. Maybe she smiled at the wrong person. Or maybe she didn't smile at all. I don't know. But I know this. Whatever evil visited that trail, it didn't win. We will carry her light forward. And we will see this through. The bigger picture. Even as Jared Elwood sat in a holding cell, refusing further statements, the system behind him, the probation files, the missed check-ins, the past violence, painted a fuller picture. He had been reported before. He had made people uncomfortable. He had slipped through. Amber wasn't just a victim. She became the consequence of inaction. Justice is supposed to be a net. A wide, flexible system of checks, balances, and boundaries designed to catch the ones slipping. But sometimes the ones who fall through aren't invisible. They were always in plain sight, just never in focus. That's how Jared Elwood existed for 5 years. A ghost on paper. A problem in person. By the time he was arrested for Amber Collins' murder, the question wasn't just, why did he do it? It was, why wasn't he stopped? A timeline of warnings. After his armed robbery conviction in 2018, Jared was placed on supervised probation, avoiding prison due to his age and lack of prior violent charges. The condition was clear. Weekly check-ins. Random home visits. Mandatory employment and anger management. But in the 5 years that followed, Jared changed addresses 7 times. Lost 4 jobs due to misconduct or absenteeism. Was flagged for 3 missed check-ins in 2022. Had 2 unofficial incident reports for making threats toward female co-workers. None of it triggered a full review. Why? Because probation files are built on paperwork. And paperwork doesn't scream until it's too late. The warning letters. Detective John Vickers was given access to Jared's full file after the arrest. What he found wasn't shocking, it was painfully familiar. Scanned memos. And signed warning letters. 2 voicemail transcripts from Jared's former manager at a tire shop. He's aggressive with female customers. I had to separate him from a cashier. Said weird stuff about being followed. You guys should check in on him. The message was sent. It was never followed up. The systemic disconnect. Jared's probation officer, Lindsay Ferris, was assigned to nearly 80 clients at the time. When asked by Internal Affairs why no action was taken on Jared's missing check-ins, she replied, he wasn't flagged as high risk. We had others with weapons violations, narcotics. He was quiet. Quiet doesn't mean safe. But on a caseload spreadsheet, Jared was just another row. The system wasn't blind. It was overloaded. The psychological trail. The court had ordered a basic mental health screening in 2021. The notes read, displays paranoid tendencies, possible delusional ideation. Non-compliant with treatment suggestion. Refused medication, claimed it made him too visible. Yet he remained unsupervised, except on paper. He moved through small towns like someone who didn't belong anywhere, staying just long enough to be noticed, then gone before anyone pushed back. How he went unseen. Jared was good at not doing enough to get arrested, just enough to make people uncomfortable. He coasted on the line between suspicion and action. Coworkers didn't report him. They just transferred. Neighbors didn't confront him. They just kept distance. Even his own family, long estranged, refused to comment. He became a local whisper. That guy in the hoodie. Quiet one who stares. Bit off but not dangerous, right? Until he was. After the fact. Amber Collins's murder became the first confirmed act of lethal violence linked to Jared. But it wasn't the first time someone feared him. A former roommate interviewed after the arrest shared this. He had a notebook where he wrote names. Just first names. No last names. Like some kind of list. He said they were people who moved wrong around him. I asked him once what that meant. He said, you'll see. They always show themselves. She never reported it. She moved out quietly. Public backlash. By mid-May 2023, Prescott's local media began reporting not just the crime, but the failure behind it. Editorials questioned the probation system's lack of oversight, the underfunding of mental health screenings, and why warnings were ignored. A town councilman issued a statement. Our job is not to assign blame. But we do have to ask hard questions, because a woman is dead and it didn't have to happen. But for Amber's family, that kind of justice felt hollow. Her mother, Marie Collins, wrote in a public letter. The man who killed our daughter didn't break out of prison. He walked free, failed upward, and we're left with the silence he left behind. Change in the wind? In response, Yavapai County announced a review of their probation department's risk assessment models. But change, if any, would come slowly. And Amber's trial, now officially State of Arizona versus Jared Elwood, would not begin for another 2 years. Until then, her photo hung on the bulletin board outside the courtroom. Not in memorial, but as a reminder. Someone saw him. Someone knew. And no one stopped him. There's no word for a parent who loses a child. We have widow, orphan, survivor. But for this pain, this kind of loss, there's only silence. And the Collins family lived in that silence for weeks. After the headlines faded, after the candlelight vigils cooled, and after the court calendar pushed the trial to a distant year, there was still an empty seat at the dinner table. But they didn't disappear. They refused to. The house that changed. Daniel and Marie Collins never moved away from Prescott. They stayed in the same 2-bedroom home with faded green shutters and wind chimes that Amber had hung herself. Inside, her room was untouched. The books on her shelf still leaned in the same way. Her half-full tea mug, the one she forgot on the dresser the week she died, was still there. Marie dusted around it. She was still alive in that room, she once told a reporter. Not physically, but in the air. In the quiet. Daniel, meanwhile, spent his evenings writing. Not memoirs. Not poems. Letters. To lawmakers. To probation boards. To oversight committees. Some were answered. Most weren't. But he kept writing. The fight for Amber's law. By September 2023, the Collins family had teamed up with a local victims advocacy group to push for legislative review of the state's probation monitoring system. They called it Amber's Law. The core proposal was simple. Any probationer with missed check-ins plus prior threats equals automatic case review. Mandatory mental health reevaluation every 6 months for high-risk individuals. Creation of a digital community flag system that allows anonymous reporting of erratic behavior for people on probation. The bill didn't pass that fall. But it started conversations in state legislature chambers that hadn't happened before. We don't want vengeance, Marie said at a hearing. We want prevention. A daughter remembered. Amber wasn't famous. She didn't leave behind a foundation or a social media empire. But she left behind friends, and they did not go quiet. In November 2023, her best friend Sierra Langley organized a trail event called Steps for Amber, a silent walk across Hayden Ridge Trail. Over 300 people showed up. Some had never met Amber. Others had hiked beside her for years and never knew her name. But they walked together. In silence. Each carrying a small laminated card with Amber's photo on one side, and a quote she once wrote on the other. Walk like the world is watching, but breathe like it's just you and the wind. The strain of waiting. While the community moved, the court stood still. By early 2024, Jared Elwood's defense team filed several procedural motions. To suppress DNA evidence from the sneaker. To challenge the admissibility of the surveillance footage. To request a change of venue due to media coverage. Each hearing felt like salt in the wound. Marie said the worst part wasn't the legal jargon. It was seeing Jared in court, unshackled, wearing clean clothes, breathing while her daughter was buried beneath stone. The letter that broke the courtroom. In March 2024, during a pretrial hearing, Daniel Collins requested to read a victim impact statement even though the trial had not yet begun. It wasn't procedure. But the judge allowed it. He read slowly, hands shaking just slightly. I don't want this court to remember Amber by the crime scene photos. I want you to remember that she made people laugh. That she once bought coffee for a stranger because he looked sad. That she told her mom she wanted to adopt a senior dog because they need love the most. I want you to remember that she mattered, even if the system didn't see her in time. The courtroom fell silent. Even the defense attorney didn't look up. Media returns, briefly. The speech reignited interest. Local news outlets began following the case again. State newspapers featured profiles on Daniel and Marie, not as broken parents but as advocates, pushing back against the slow churn of bureaucracy. One headline read, "They lost their daughter. Now they're trying to fix the system that let it happen." But behind every article was a truth few wanted to confront. No amount of reform would bring Amber back. A photo and a promise. In the Collins living room hangs a framed photo of Amber, taken 2 months before her death. She's laughing mid-blink, holding a coffee mug too big for her hand. There's sunlight in her hair and no shadow in her eyes. Underneath the frame is a brass plate that reads, "Keep walking, baby. We're right behind you." 2.5 years. That's how long the Collins family waited to hear their daughter's name spoken aloud, in a courtroom under oath by someone other than themselves. October 28, 2025. The state of Arizona versus Jared Benjamin Elwood opened at the Maricopa County Superior Court. The gallery was full. Amber's parents sat in the front row, hands folded together, never once looking at the man in the defense chair. He didn't look at them either. But the silence between them said everything. Opening statements. The prosecution didn't dramatize. They didn't need to. Amber Collins went for a walk. She did nothing wrong. But someone was watching. Someone who brought a weapon. Someone who left her to die in the dirt. This wasn't fate. This was a decision. The defense argued something else entirely. That Jared Elwood had no proven motive, that surveillance was inconclusive, and that the DNA match on the sneaker could have come from a shared environment. It was the same argument they'd been building for 2 years. Reasonable doubt. And for a while, it almost worked. Witness testimony. The jury heard from Emily Rhodes, the woman who found Amber. Karen Gwynn, the forensic tech who linked the tread and the knife. Sierra Langley, Amber's best friend, who cried when asked what Amber's final message meant. And 3 hikers who described a man in a gray hoodie watching people days before the murder. They also heard from the store clerk who sold Jared the box cutter. And the probation officer who hadn't seen him in over a month before Amber died. Each voice painted a shadow. And slowly the shadow began to take shape. The turning point. Midway through the trial, the prosecution introduced a single piece of evidence, quiet but devastating. A torn thread of Amber's hoodie, found twisted around a corner barb of the fence, with Jared Elwood's skin cell DNA embedded in it. He had never been seen with her, never admitted to being near her. But there he was, in the fibers, in the fabric of the crime. The verdict. After 12 days of testimony and 7 hours of deliberation, the courtroom went still. We, the jury, find the defendant, Jared Benjamin Elwood, guilty of murder in the first degree. Marie exhaled but made no sound. Daniel closed his eyes. Jared showed no emotion. Sentencing. At sentencing, the judge read a statement that didn't feel like law. It felt like closure. Mr. Elwood, you chose isolation. You chose silence. But what you did echoes loudly. You took a life that gave joy to others. You caused pain that rippled beyond any courtroom. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jared blinked once. Nothing more. Aftermath. There were no cheers. No hugs of celebration. Because justice isn't joy, it's acknowledgement. The Collins family left through the side exit. They didn't want cameras. They just wanted quiet. One final walk. A week later, Daniel returned to Hayden Ridge Trail. Alone. He wore a jacket Amber once bought him. The same one he almost gave to Goodwill and couldn't. He walked slowly, stopping once near the rusted barbed wire fence. There, beneath a low stone, was a smooth river rock. Carved into it, "Walk like the world is watching." He knelt. Not to pray. Just to sit beside her. One more time. Epilogue. Amber Collins never got to grow old. She never saw justice, not in life. But her name changed policies. Her story reformed procedures. Her walk made others look up from their phones and notice who was near. And her family? They still walk the trail. Still say her name. Still remind the world that silence doesn't mean absence. It means legacy.